So the first module will be a tool overview. And as I mentioned, the purpose of the tool is to provide this collaborative framework where everybody can work in the same system. When you enter data about a BMP, you know it's going into a place where it's going to be maintained and over time. And so we're collecting information about where BMPs are, what type they are, attributes of those stormwater BMPs, things ranging from trash screens on catch basins to detention basins to wetlands, the whole gamut of stormwater BMPs. We also want to track their condition. So we want to know which ones are not looking good and need maintenance. We want to know which ones are great, and we can maybe reduce the maintenance frequency on those, for example. We want to use the system to record inspection and maintenance events. So instead of paper forms, having a place where these inspection and maintenance events are being logged and can be added to over time, and we'll build a record of how often we're inspecting them and how much we're removing from them, so that we can get some better estimates of how often they need to be maintained, et cetera. And then for jurisdictional managers, tracking funding events, so assigning how much did it cost to build this, how much has it been costing to maintain these BMPs. I mentioned that based on this data, the next level is to use this to establish pollutant loads and pollutant load reductions associated with these BMPs, help with planning future BMPs, and help with O&M planning. Where do we need to go next? So some terms the system uses that are maybe used a lot of different ways by a lot of different people, but I want to just define them in terms of how we use them in the tool. An organization is an entity that can have users associated with it and can have funding sources associated with it. So United Stormwater can be an organization. The City of Dana Point can be an organization. The State Water Resources Control Board and their grant funding programs can be an organization. An organization doesn't define ownership. It doesn't define responsibility. It just defines who someone's with or what a funding source is from. A jurisdiction defines ownership and responsibility. The jurisdiction is one of the 13 MS4 jurisdictions in South Orange County. And so that's a BMP is going to be within a jurisdiction. Even if it's a private site within Laguna Niguel and owned by the private entity, it is within the City of Laguna Niguel jurisdiction, for example. The owner, on the other hand, could be the public entity that has jurisdiction over it, or it could be the private entity that actually owns the BMP and is responsible for it. And then a user is any one of you. A user has an organization that they're associated with. They're associated with one or more jurisdictions. So if you're someone who works across different jurisdictions, you can have responsibility to view the BMPs and edit BMPs across different jurisdictions. And you're going to have a certain role, and I'll get into the roles on the next screen. So this is a summary of user roles. Many of you here today are going to be jurisdictional editors. That means that you have a lot of permissions in the tool to add BMPs, to change the inventory information about the BMPs. You can set benchmarks and thresholds for what it means for the BMP to be in good shape versus how far from that would it be before it's considered in bad shape. You can perform and record field visits, and you can also add and edit WQMP sites. So that's a plot of land associated with a parcel. And you have pretty much all the permissions in the tool that most people have, except you can't invite other users. That's something we limit to the jurisdictional managers who are managing the crews that will be using the tool. And you're not allowed to delete BMPs. So if something is out there and it shouldn't be out there, you say this needs to be deleted, you're going to need to let your jurisdictional manager know, hey, we need to delete these BMPs, and that person would be able to delete them. In the future, we are going to incorporate a review process where when something's edited by a jurisdictional editor, it would have to be reviewed and accepted, verified by a manager in some form or another before it becomes a sort of a public record, an official verified public record. And in the current term, everything is considered provisional until we get that step figured out. So all records are provisional, and you'll see that this will mostly affect jurisdictional managers. They'll be asked to look at a screen and look at what BMPs have been edited and accept the edits to those BMPs, for example. And then administrators, there's just a few, and those are the folks who can control what actual BMP configurations looks like. So what parameters are we asking you to collect about a BMP, and so on. We can also help with the more master level user permissions and roles and stuff like that. Yes, Kim?
Right now, are the administrators just okay?
Right now, the administrator is just me and John Burns with Sitka, who helped develop the tool on the software side. And in the future, as we progress, it will be someone at the county will also have administrator roles. Yeah. Maybe Jackie, if she volunteers. All right, so record types. We have treatment BMPs primarily. This is really focused on things that you can see in the ground. You know, a lot of BMPs are source controls, you know, municipal housekeeping measures. This tool is really focused right now on treatment BMPs. A field record is a term we use. It's a general term to indicate that you were in the field and you did either you improved the inventory by adding new information, by taking a picture of the BMP, for example. You performed an assessment, which is to track the condition of the BMP, and or you performed maintenance. You don't have to do all of these for it to be considered a field record. Any element of this performed by somebody in the field is considered a field record. Within that, an assessment is a look at the BMP. It's tracking how much vegetative cover does it have, how much sediment does it have in it, and these things are used. They're compared against benchmarks to say, is this BMP in good shape or is it not in good shape? And so an assessment is pretty much an inspection. You can think of it like an inspection, but it also yields a numeric score. And so that score then can be used to prioritize where we focus maintenance efforts. Maintenance, it's hard to define maintenance because maintenance is maintenance. It's something you're out there in the field, you're physically doing something to the BMP. If you just went out and inspected it, it looked great, then don't perform maintenance. But if you've done anything like remove leaves from it, anything like that, then that's a maintenance event that should be recorded and tracked. I think most know what a WQMP is. That's a parcel that was developed by either a public or private entity that incorporated BMPs to conform with the MS4 permit, and that's basically a legal document that applies to that parcel that describes those BMPs. Finally, a funding event. Many of you won't have to deal with that, but that's a certain amount of money provided by a certain entity for a certain phase of the project development. So planning, design, O&M, that's recorded along with that BMP.